On Small Cap Power, we welcome Bruce Campbell, founder and portfolio manager of StoneCastle Asset Management. Bruce, thank you for being here again with us.
Yeah, I'm glad to join you.
So last year in November, you told us that a lot of these marijuana companies got way ahead of themselves based on current sales and cash flow. Where are a majority of those companies now, 6 months later?
Well, we've kind of seen a real volatility in the industry, right? So November came, we saw the big spike up, prices pulled back, and then we sort of slow build up towards what we saw just before the government announced the legislation here a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Now, before that happened, there was a lot of thought that markets would react really well, but there was a bit of a pullback. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it was really a function of buy the rumor, sell the news, right? So everyone was focused on two events. One was the task force last fall, and then the second was the actual legislation tabling. And so, there's been a lot of supply that's come out as far as new companies going public,
right.
And the news was kind of a finite period. So I think investors got really excited about it, and then it sort of pulled back afterwards because they were like, okay, the news is out. Now we'll sort of take some profits.
Right. So what are some things that are overlooked when people invest in marijuana stocks that we should be thinking about before a year later it does get legalized?
Yeah. Well, there's a few things that I think investors really need to focus on right now. It's been pretty easy for these guys to raise money. Like they've just do a bought deal financing. And they have 50 or 25, 30, $50 million.
Right.
They're going to have to put that money to work, and they're going to have to do it efficiently, and that's really what people are going to have to watch over the next year. Mm-hmm. They're also going to have to watch sales trends because the industry itself is growing on the medical side. Obviously, we don't know where rec's going to be yet, but the medical side is growing. But we're going to have to watch to make sure that the companies that you own are participating in that sales growth, so they're continuing to keep their market share or grow their market share.
Right, and obviously this is a hard question, but if you had to say there is a safe bet among these marijuana companies, would you have any picks?
Well, I guess it depends on what you're looking for. Right now, from a valuation standpoint, Organigram is probably the one that's been beaten up the most, so probably has the least amount of downside. That has to do with their recall with the pesticides, but that's something that they'll address. Right. But if you were an investor, you weren't in the sector and you needed to get into the sector, you probably want to go with the largest is Canopy, and so it would be the one that would probably, if you're only to own one, that would be the one to own.
Okay. Now, American versus Canadian companies, what's better for an investor that doesn't know so much?
Yeah, so right now, the U.S. industry isn't anywhere near what Canada is because it's so fragmented. It's still illegal, across the entire United States. There's only certain states that it's legal. So from our perspective, the U.S. is interesting and it's an opportunity, but it looks like the Canadian companies are really going to grow into global brands. So you've already seen that, operations or agreements in Germany, Brazil, Australia, and you'll probably continue to see that as more jurisdictions, countries get legalized. Mm-hmm. You're going to probably see some of the Canadian LPs go to those areas, and we're really actually going to build a global business out of Canada, and right. Probably in 5 years they're going to be dominant players.
So as a portfolio manager, you're still firm on the fact that it's going to be a huge industry?
Oh yeah, the numbers in Canada are 10 billion, but worldwide it could be a 100 or 150 billion dollar opportunity in the next 5 years.
Right, and are analysts looking at the cultural or flashbacks, basically?
Not so much. People are just kind of looking at the industry right now and saying, okay, like the steps for medical, obviously there, now the rec steps there, so these are going to be big companies.
So Bruce, I understand that you have a fund specifically dedicated to marijuana stocks. Can you tell us how that's getting built up?
Yeah, so we're just in the process of getting that going right now. It's going to be a new era cannabis fund because we really think it's going to be a new era for an emerging business. We're just going through the final legal documents right now with our lawyers, and we should have it available for investors fairly soon.
Very good. Aside from marijuana, are there any stock picks you have at this time that you can mention for our audience?
Sure. One that I've talked about in the past, and it was kind of a darling, and then it was like most hated, is patient home monitoring. And it's one that everyone loved a few years back. They were making all these acquisitions, and then they got really overvalued. Company was having trouble, sort of meeting their targets. Behind the scenes, the new management teams come in. They've cleaned everything up. They just reported in February their first cash flow generating quarter, and we're expecting to see another cash flow generating quarter. The stock trades super cheap, and this is what happens. People love it, and then they hate it, and they don't want to look at it again. But the valuation is so cheap, and the fact that the company's now turned around, that's one that we really think has an opportunity here.
All right, Bruce, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you.
To watch expert videos just like this one, you can go to smallcappower.com.